In today's video, I'm going to be picking every single Week 7 college football game, as usual, using this beautiful website, Playoff Predictors. I'm going to start with the disclaimer I usually start with, which is the fact that I'm not going to go super extremely in-depth into every single game, but with the big games, we will still do so and actually go a little bit more in-depth, just not for every single one. Because we're picking every single game. So there's a lot of stuff to go through here, but I'm super excited. Let's just get into it. We have got a loaded Week 7, and it starts with some Wednesday and Thursday games. Now, by the time this video uploads, a lot of these games will have likely already happened. Definitely the Wednesday ones, maybe some of the Thursday ones. So going to be pretty important picks right off the bat. This video could age poorly before it's even posted. Missouri State at Middle Tennessee. Been really disappointed by Middle Tennessee this season. They lose the game to Austin Peay. They did have a nice win on the road versus Nevada and come from behind fashion, but still, Missouri State I think has shown a little bit more to me. The last time we saw them, they competed pretty hard versus Western Kentucky. So I think on the road, Missouri State can step it up and get a nice victory against a squad that's kind of been aimless this season. Liberty at UTEP is another interesting one because Liberty was the favorite to win the CUSA, as they have been, and they looked great on paper, but it's just been a disaster this year. They've really gotten bulldozed in some tough games, and I believe they still only have one win on the season versus an FCS opponent. UTEP, I believe, is in the same boat. They've had some more competitive games. They've showed just a little bit more. I'm going to put some trust in Scotty Walden. I'm going to put some trust in this home field environment. That's a long distance for Liberty to travel from Lynchburg to El Paso. So I think UTEP gets the home victory there. Let's hope we went 2 for 2 on those Wednesday games because a lot of you will already know the results to those games. Louisiana Tech on the road versus Kennesaw State. It's actually a battle between two teams in my group of 5, top 25. Kennesaw State at like 23. I believe Louisiana Tech more around 15. Louisiana Tech's been really excellent this season, and it's been really cool to see them continue the defensive success they had last season despite losing their defensive coordinator headed into this year, and they've shown a lot more offensively. It's the reason that they've got off to a nice start this season. I think they get the win on the road versus an Owls team of Kennesaw State that has really been very pleasantly surprising this season, and they're capable of winning this kind of game, but Louisiana Tech feels like upper tier CUSA to me this season, just as I thought in the offseason. East Carolina at Tulane. ECU's shown a lot of really great stuff this season so far. The nice win over Army I thought was very impressive. That was also on a Thursday night, I believe. Might have been a Friday. But they go on the road versus Tulane. I think Tulane's just a really excellent team this year at home, especially East Carolina coming off a physical game like that. I really don't think Tulane's going to sleepwalk into this one, and I don't think they're going to get upset. So I think Tulane gets the nice victory at home. Southern Miss at Georgia Southern is an interesting battle. Georgia Southern, I still feel, is a good team, but they've kind of been battered in some tough games so far this season. Southern Miss has a few quality wins. I thought a very impressive victory over App State a couple of weeks ago. So it really could go either way. I'm going to rock with Georgia Southern still being the home team, still a team I believe in. You look at their losses, a few tough ones they've had. There's a Fresno State blowout loss, a blowout loss to USC, and a tough loss to James Madison as well. I still just think that they are a quality team that will find a way to turn it around. There's just too much back from last season, and they haven't looked completely lifeless. So I know that people are lower in general on Georgia Southern right now, but I'm going to rock with them at home. And then Jacksonville State at Sam Houston, rounding out the Thursday games here. Sam Houston still looking for that first win on the season. Been very pleasantly surprised by Jacksonville State so far this year. I think their defense has been really pleasant. I think they're going to get another win here against a Sam Houston team that maybe is starting to lose touch this season as they continue to rack up L's. It's been a tough start to the season for the Bearcats. One of 3 teams that still don't have a win this season. South Florida at North Texas is one of these Friday treats we get. South Florida, a top 25 team with 1 loss on the season to Miami and a win over Florida, obviously, the signature victory, versus North Texas. They're still undefeated. They've survived in a couple of overtime games to get to this point in the season. They've got Drew Mestemaker and a really high-flying offense, a defense that's been more opportunistic this season. It's the reason they're in such a great position right now. At home, it feels like they've got a lot in their direction. I believe they opened as the favorites in this one, but I just feel like the Byron Brown offense for South Florida has a high enough floor to succeed against this defense that has been spotty for North Texas. This team is probably a play or two away and was a play or two away from losing to Western Michigan and from losing to Army as well. And I feel like if either of those sway the other direction, South Florida would be a lot heavier of a favorite here. So I like South Florida. I think they're going to get the win on the road on Friday. Fresno State at Colorado State, another one of those Pac-12 preview games, but still a Mountain West matchup this year. Colorado State, man, it has been ugly start to the season. They have not shown a ton of life. Their only win is against Northern Colorado in a game they arguably should have lost. So Fresno State and Matt Entz going to continue to keep the ball rolling in this first season. Credit to Entz. I had my doubts, but he's really picked up this Fresno State team and program and just kept it humming. They look a lot better than they did last year under Tim Skipper. So it's a lot of credit to him, especially with what Skipper just did for UCLA. You could argue that was a little bit more to do with New Heischel, but we'll talk about that game later for UCLA. Rutgers at Washington, another one of those Friday treats, was on Friday last year as well, and that one was super intense, came down to the wire. Huskies, I think, are a lot better of a team this season. Obviously, they showed in that comeback win against Maryland. They were down 20-0, come all the way back and win that game on the road. It's kind of a tough spot for the Huskies, even though they are at home, having to go against a physical team like Ohio State, and then on the road versus Maryland, now back home against Rutgers, another physical team with a strong identity. Rutgers just hasn't had that extra oomph I was looking for this season. Their passing game is still pretty killer, but Washington has the dudes to match with them, and I really like all of the skill players that Washington has on offense. They really shined in that late game versus Maryland, and I think they're going to shine here in a win versus Rutgers. Georgia heads on the road to play Auburn. There are a lot of blinking, flashing red lights that tell me Georgia is going down in an upset in this game. Georgia is coming off of a couple physical games versus Kentucky and Alabama. Yes, they end up winning 35-14, but that was a physical game, especially with how the Wildcats tried to play against them. Back-to-back physical games for the Bulldogs. Now they're going on the road into a place where weird things happen against an Auburn team coming off of a bye, and we've seen Auburn play this year. They have an excellent defense. They ended up losing by 6 versus A&M, by 7 versus Oklahoma. They were in both of those games. In fact, they had the late lead versus Oklahoma. Auburn is a really solid team this year. It's been the offensive inconsistency that's really plagued them, but just because of the schedule dynamics at play, Auburn's at home. I think Auburn's really good. I think the Auburn defense can step up and take control of this game and just pull off an absolute stunner. Not a lot of people are looking at this upset and thinking this one's going to happen, but I'm going to call it. I think Auburn gets the home victory over Georgia. Next game, Clemson at Boston College. Clemson obviously has had a disastrous start to the season, but they're capable of shredding inferior opponents. We saw that against North Carolina last week. Boston College coming off of a just destructive, terrible loss to Pitt. And so for that reason, I think Clemson gets the ball rolling still and gets another nice win this time over Boston College. That moves us on to a big-time MAC rivalry, Toledo at Bowling Green. Toledo's had some early turmoil this season. Bowling Green has also taken a couple of losses, but it does feel like the whole season for both these guys doesn't necessarily come down to this game. They both still have MAC title aspirations, but it's a big one. This is a huge game for Jason Candle and Toledo. They need to get the season back on track. You can't continue to lose sloppy games like they did to Western Michigan earlier this season. I think they go ahead and go on the road and get the big-time rivalry win over Bowling Green. New Mexico at Boise State, another tight Mountain West battle. New Mexico taking their first loss in conference play this season against San Jose State. I was about to say first loss of the season, but they lost to Michigan. Playing the Broncos, who have 2 losses now after a loss to Notre Dame in a hard-fought game. I could see the Broncos coming out maybe a little slow, coming off such an emotional game and a tough loss, but I really think they're going to come out motivated. They are a much better team than New Mexico, as good as New Mexico's looked at times this year. I think they showed a few of the flaws that we kind of knew might be there with the Lobos this year. So that's going to be a Boise State victory on the Smurf turf. ULM heads on the road to play Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina is bad, really bad. They lose on the road 47-7 to Old Dominion, coming off a bye. Yes, Old Dominion's really good, but Coastal Carolina's had some really sloppy, ugly performances. Purely a head coach matchup here. Bryant Vincent versus Tim Beck. I'm just rocking with Bryant Vincent 10 times out of 10. ULM does not have the most talented team. They can't throw the ball to save their lives, and yet their running game is elite. They play sound defense, and they play solid defense, especially when they need to. It's super impressive. I think they're going to will their way to a bowl game this year. This is one of those games where, on paper in the offseason, maybe you wouldn't give ULM the nod, but all of a sudden it looks like they've got a pretty good opportunity to win here. So ULM looking to get another W there on the road. Iowa State at Colorado is a Big 12 clash. The Buffaloes have been up and down this year. They've taken some tough losses. I still think they're a decent team. I think they're better than their record indicates. Iowa State's coming off of the upset loss to Cincinnati last week. I don't know. I'm not sure if those starting corners are going to be back. Even if they are, I still think this is a great spot for Colorado at home to get a solid win and to pull off another upset win. I believe Iowa State's still clinging to that AP poll rank, which is kind of terrible in its own right, but still an impressive resume. I don't hate that much. I just prefer that Cincinnati was ranked. But I think Iowa State's going to get got again. It's just tough. They've been playing close games. Their style of play is going to put them in a lot of close games. I think they lose 2 in a row. NIU heads on the road to play Eastern Michigan, a couple of teams that have had many close losses, just can't seem to pull it out. NIU had the loss to San Diego State 6-3. They took a tough, close loss to Miami of Ohio last week. And Eastern Michigan has lost a couple of overtime games this year. So it's a battle. Something's got to give here. I just think Eastern Michigan has been playing a little bit better recently, so I'm going to lean them, even though NIU might be the more established team. It just feels like Creighton's team really needs it in a spot like this, especially after missing a bowl game last year. Does feel like missing a bowl game is probably on the table again, but both teams have been playing pretty inspired. I hope neither one of these head coaches gets fired or any real hot seat talk, because I do think they're both excellent coaches. It's just hard in the MAC, especially with how your roster gets shredded each year. I think both are still excellent head coaches. UAB heads on the road to play FAU. FAU showing some life last week, getting a very decisive victory versus Rice. That was a Rice team that had looked really excellent up to this point in the season. I think they keep it rolling with the home win over UAB. Should be a high-flying, high-scoring matchup. I've made my thoughts very present on UAB and Trent Dilfer in that situation. Again, I do think Dilfer should probably be fired, and I think if he's not fired, it just has to do with the administration not being willing to admit when they're wrong. You look at the direction the program has gone as a whole ever since he's got there. It's been disastrous. It's been nothing short of disastrous. Pitt heads on the road to play Florida State. My initial lean was Florida State, right? Noel's probably going to get back on track. Tough loss to Miami, but they should do it. But then again, Pitt, I still think they're very well coached. And that switch they made last week, it wasn't all just Boston College being bad. Mason Heinschel, I believe is his name. I might have mispronounced that or missaid that. Picturing it in my brain, he was a killer versus Boston College. I really think he transformed the offense. I could see Pitt having a midseason surge here. I think they go on the road and pull off a stunner. Not a lot of people were paying too close of attention to what Pitt did last week. I like them to go on the road and get the victory. Georgia Tech survived a scare versus Wake Forest. And now they're playing a Virginia Tech team that's shown some life. They ended up winning at NC State. So kind of a sketchy game for Georgia Tech. I think they got to lock in here. They're at home. I think they should be fine. I think they'll take care of business. But still, Virginia Tech definitely has a puncher's chance in that one. Georgia Tech has already shown they're not immune to a stupid upset loss. App State on the road versus Georgia State. App State coming off the close victory over Oregon State. Really nice victory for their program. I'm not sure if many people know this. They actually stormed the field after beating Oregon State. I was at the game. They stormed the field. It is true. But, it's still a good win for the program, even though Oregon State might not be great this season. It's still a win over a power conference team, aesthetically speaking. So I understand why they did so. They're going on the road to play Georgia State. Very talented team, not well coached. Del McGee may be on his last legs in just his second season because of how bad the product has been relative to what their talent roster is in the Sun Belt. So App State, I think, gets it going and gets another win here. Dowell Logan's in his first season has been doing some good things. So they get another nice win here, I think, at Georgia State. Another Sun Belt battle between Louisiana and James Madison. Louisiana just hasn't really lived up to the hype for this season. It's not been a very good encore season after a Sun Belt title game appearance last year. James Madison, however, has looked really excellent. They did have a close win over Georgia State last week. Maybe not as dominant as they wanted it to be, but still a very good team, and a team I think will get a home victory here. TCU at Kansas State in the Big 12. Kansas State nearly took out Baylor last week, but just came up short. Another heartbreaker for them. And spread surprisingly tight in this game. TCU's only about a 1.5 favorite. I've seen people pointing that out. I do think there's something to be said about the sort of dysfunction and maybe the mental side of things of what's happened at Kansas State this year. They're still fighting. They're still battling. We saw that against Baylor, but just the inconsistency, man, and the mistakes, the little mental errors, I think it's just stacking up this year. I think TCU goes on and gets a road victory, one they're going to really want. I'm trying to remember if they played last week, but I know for a fact that they lost a tough one to Arizona State a couple of weeks ago. So that'd be a good win to get their season sort of back on track and keep some of those hopes alive. UMass at Kent State. This is real sickos hour, a game between two just terrible teams. Kent State, the only win between these two against an FCS opponent. And that ended a long drought for them without a victory. They host a UMass team that's winless. This is a major, massive game for UMass. It's going to be how they measure the success of this season. Last year, they did not get an FBS win. This would be an FBS win. They also play Akron. Both of these teams still play Akron. It's like a trifecta of just terrible teams. It's awesome. But Kent State, I just think, has the better dudes this year. They've got better playmakers, and I think they'll rally. They'll rally around Mark Carney, the interim, and at home get a victory. South Carolina at LSU is an SEC battle. South Carolina still very capable of inflicting a lot of damage onto teams. They still have Lenore Sellers. They've got a lot of really excellent skill players. the offense has just been clunky. It's just not been clicking. And we've seen teams that look like that where it clicked, like Florida last week versus Texas, for example, versus an excellent Texas defense. This is an excellent LSU defense. Is this the week where it happens for South Carolina? I don't necessarily think so. I did pick Florida last week because I thought that's when it was going to happen, but just feels like something's really off for South Carolina, and it's just been a tough early season for them. LSU, I think, is going to get it figured out. The offense has been really disappointing for the Tigers. We'll see if they can maybe get back on track like a lot of teams have been able to do versus South Carolina this season. So part of a murderer's row for South Carolina. It is Cocktober, if you believe in that sort of thing, but we did a video in the offseason where we actually looked at the numbers, and South Carolina doesn't perform any better. In fact, they perform worse in October most of the time. It's November under Beamer where they actually perform really well. So I like LSU at home. We got more Sunbelt action. Sunbelt, Funbelt, Old Dominion looking like the favorites in the Sunbelt. They've been so dominant. I'm rocking with them against a Marshall team that has looked largely lifeless this season. It's been really ugly under Tony Gibson, who notably has me blocked on Twitter for who knows why. I don't know if it's because the admin who runs it doesn't like me or something like that. All I did was speak the truth about this team all offseason. I said it's going to be a rough year for Marshall fans, and for Marshall, they didn't want to listen. It's been a rough year, but, that's Twitter. That's not real life, so it doesn't matter. Houston at Oklahoma State, Big 12 battle. Houston's looked really solid this season, coming off a disheartening loss to Texas Tech, though. Quick turnaround against an Oklahoma State, maybe rallying under an interim head coach. Maybe there could be some extra juice here from the Cowboys out the gate, but Houston, at the end of the day, I think just has a lot more to play for. And is a better team, better talent roster as well. So Houston should get the job done, but I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma State shows some early fight in that one. Penn State plays host to Northwestern this weekend, coming off the loss to UCLA. Maybe Nittany Lions fans are bracing for the worst. I think it's not going to happen. There's not going to be a crazy upset here, but definitely be careful. Northwestern can shorten a game and take you into a place you didn't want to go, just like UCLA was able to do. UCLA didn't shorten the game. They just straight up attacked, which is why I don't think Northwestern's going to win this game. They would have to attack aggressively in order to win this one, but I just don't think it's going to happen. But who knows? Northwestern did beat UCLA, and they do have back-to-back wins they're riding right now. They beat ULM the week after that, so maybe if you believe in transitive property, there's something there. Stanford heads on the road to play SMU. Stanford just is not a very good team at all this year. I'm surprised they pulled out that San Jose State game. I was surprised when they beat Boston College, but just says a lot more about how bad Boston College is this year. SMU gets the home victory. Florida on the road versus Texas A&M, coming off the upset win over Texas. The offense finally clicked. They made some big plays. They had some big hitters. Future star stepping up in Dallas Wilson had an awesome performance. Florida's defense still really excellent, can absolutely test you. Texas A&M's offense has had some issues this season. Think about only putting up 16 points against Auburn. Florida's a comparable defense, especially with what they've figured out recently. Could be a tough spot, but with Florida, it's the dynamics. They've been on the road so much in the early going. It's just been rough, and now they have to go on the road versus Texas A&M. They are riding the high of upsetting Texas. Who knows? Napier's done crazier things, but just feels like too tall of a task to go win a game of this magnitude on the heels of the Texas game they were able to pull out. So I am rocking with the Aggies, especially at home. I just think this is too tall of an ask this early in the season. But then the conversation about Napier and about Florida is going to become really interesting. Is it just over? Is he canned because they have 4 losses? Or because of that Texas result, are you willing to hear him out a little bit more? It's going to be interesting. Troy at Texas State is an intriguing battle. Texas State, man, dropping a really tough game to Arkansas State. That was a huge game for the Red Wolves, but a tough blow to the Sun Belt title hopes of the Bobcats. And Troy is a team that's looked pretty pleasantly surprising. They're coming off a nice win over South Alabama. I do think Texas State is the better team and at home will get the win, but would not surprise me to see Troy pulling it out, especially, considering some of the recent results for both of those teams. Kansas at Texas Tech. Jayhawks have a really solid offense. It's probably going to be the best offense Texas Tech's seen all the year. Don't think it's really going to change much. I think the Red Raiders are going to get it done. That defensive front has looked so nasty. I watched them go into Salt Lake and just shut down Utah and win that game by 20. So I just think that they're a really, really excellent team. They are the far and away favorites to win the Big 12 at this point. Winning this game, they're going to set up a really big-time matchup in Tempe the week after. Navy heads on the road to play Temple. I think Navy's the better team. Navy's looked like the better team. They played like the better team, but Temple is also really excellent this season, and they've been having a really magical year so far. A really awesome upset win over UTSA. They're at home. Why not? I think they catch Navy and they bite Navy in a spot where Navy was not expecting to get bit. So I think Temple gets a nice win at home. Miami of Ohio At Akron, Miami has gotten their season a little bit more on track after losing each of those tough non-conference games. They got an FCS win. They beat NIU last week. I think they keep it rolling. They beat an Akron team that has shown some signs of life. They did actually get a victory last week. I'm trying to remember exactly who it was against. I believe it may have been Ball State, but that's not true because Ball State pulled off an upset win over Ohio. I'll probably remember who Akron beat, but they did beat a team in conference play. That was a big win for them. BYU at Arizona, maybe a tough trip to the desert for the Cougs here. You've got a young quarterback, but I think that young quarterback in Bear Bachmeier has looked excellent on the road this season. BYU's had to do it a lot. They had to go out at Colorado, at ECU. They played really well. They've responded really well to some of the offseason turmoil, and it's been a really pleasant surprise to see BYU just sort of pick up where they left off rather than be underwhelming like some people thought they might be. UCF kind of getting exposed for being a not very good team and just having a soft start to their schedule. Cincinnati's been really pleasantly surprising. The offense has really been humming along, and they sort of rode that big fourth down catch against Kansas to keep the game alive, upset win, and then they pull off another upset win last week. I think they're going to keep the positive vibes going, and this is a huge stretch for Satterfield. It's been awesome, and it's really gotten him kind of off the hot seat and more into conversations about like Big 12 title talk and maybe, I'm not going to say Coach of the Year talk because that's, I think, a little nuts, but some really positive conversations as opposed to some of the negative conversations we were having about the Bearcats. Ohio State heads on the road to play Illinois. This one's a top 25 battle. It's also big noon kickoff. Definitely a big game. Illinois, I think they definitely have a really solid counterpunch that they've shown this year. The offense under Barry Lenny Jr. able to really produce, but that's against teams like USC that are still figuring it out on defense, and Purdue. We've seen what happens when they run into a high caliber defense and what is possible to happen, and that's just a complete shutdown of their offense. They got held to 10 points versus Indiana. Ohio State's obviously very capable of that, especially if the Buckeyes get up early in this game. How is Illinois going to get back into it? They're not going to be thrown against this Ohio State secondary very effectively because it is an elite secondary. So really concerned about Illinois in this game. There's a very specific game script that this will have to follow for the upset to occur, and it just doesn't seem very likely to me, especially with the way Julian Sayin has been playing as he gets better and better this season. Nebraska at Maryland is going to be a tough test for the Cornhuskers. Maryland has been a pesky team this year, a lot more pesky than most people thought. If they didn't choke a fourth quarter 20-point lead versus Washington, they'd still be undefeated at this point. So Nebraska definitely has their hands full here, especially because they started the game kind of sloppy versus Michigan State. They blew some opportunities. They're going to have to play a clean game. They're going to have to play a good game. I think they're capable of doing it. I think they'll go do it on the road versus Maryland and keep the good times rolling early in the season. Purdue at Minnesota is a Big Ten clash here. I think Purdue has shown at this point they're not as bad as they were last season. They've been testing some teams. There's been positivity. But Minnesota, I do think, is a solid team. I think if they stick to their identity and do all the things that they've done when they succeed and not necessarily what they did in the Cal game, they'll take out Purdue. I know that's a little bit of a sloppy, messy answer there. But regardless, I will be rocking with Minnesota to defeat Purdue as the home team. One of the main events, Indiana at Oregon, a top 10 battle. Oregon Ducks, their signature win, the elephant in the room is that they went to overtime versus Penn State, and Penn State went and got shellacked by UCLA the next week. Are there issues with Oregon's offense? Should there be some concern with Oregon? I don't necessarily think so. I think Penn State is obviously still a very talented team. The external dynamics of that UCLA game for Penn State should not be used to discredit Oregon. And what they did, they went on the road in a night game as underdogs against a really excellent Penn State squad, and they got a W. I thought that the game plan for Penn State was better against Oregon, and they still responded. Dante Moore looked so composed in a tough environment, and the offensive line really held up in a big game. I don't know if Indiana is capable of exposing that Oregon offensive line or making Dante Moore uncomfortable, especially in front of the home fans. So I think Oregon is probably going to win this football game. Indiana certainly will be capable of scoring in this one. I certainly think they'll be able to do that against Oregon, but man, it just feels like there's too much of a talent mismatch here. Indiana's just getting caught in a tough spot. This one might feel similar to the Indiana-Ohio State game from last season. As improved as Indiana does look this year, I'm just still not convinced they can level up to that top tier of Big Ten contender status. It's such a tough leap to make, and I think we've seen time and time again. Here's another big-time Big Ten clash. We've got a bunch of them. They're all just stacked here in a row. Michigan at USC. This one was an instant classic last season, back and forth. I think we'll get a lot of the same this year. USC, the home team this time, and I think that does change things. USC has looked really excellent this year. Offensively, they've really taken a big step forward. Mayava looks like he just fits the system a lot better. And defensively, they've shown some signs of life. They've continued the positive trends from last season under DeAnton Lynn, the defensive coordinator. Michigan, obviously, we know their deal. They have a fantastic defense. They have an offense that struggles to pass the ball sometimes, but can really be explosive on the ground. Bryce Underwood's legs have really factored in recently. He's been throwing the ball and looking more comfortable each week. I'm just not so sure that the progression of Underwood is going to be just completely linear this season. I think he's due for a game where he kind of struggles, and I think USC can throw some things at him, especially in an intimidating environment that he maybe won't be ready for. So I think USC is going to be the team that has the ball last, gets the exciting drive here, and I think maybe just a little bit of inconsistency from Underwood could be what makes Michigan struggle and lose in this game. Arkansas at Tennessee is a really intriguing game. I almost want to rock with Bobby Petrino here because he changes up all the defensive staffers. I almost just feel like the defense is going to come out and look great for the first time all year, and we've seen the offense for Arkansas absolutely shine. However, I have faded Tennessee a couple times, too many this year. I do think Tennessee is pretty dang good, and I keep underestimating them. So I'm going to rock with the Volunteers at home to get the victory over Arkansas. We'll see if the Bobby Petrino effect is real. Rice at UTSA, a battle between two teams that are coming off of losses. Rice, a tough loss to FAU, to UTSA, the loss to Temple. I think UTSA at home gets a win, keeps some of those slim American Conference title hopes intact, especially with some of the guys on their team that have been having a really successful start to the season. Arizona State at Utah is a big-time battle. The Sun Devils just do not play well on the road versus Utah. We've seen it time and time again. The Utes, really excellent at home, obviously. They got kind of humbled last time they were there against Texas Tech, but the Utes still overall look solid. The offense had a solid bounce-back week after that loss to Texas Tech. They still obviously have a very excellent defense. Arizona State, I think, is an underrated and excellent defense this season as well, but there's been some really concerning things with Sam Leavitt and his processing this year. They're still pretty good at running the football. Their O-line play has been pretty solid, but Leavitt, when it comes to a game like this on the road, are there still going to be those issues where Jordan Tyson's wide open and he's not finding him? Or maybe he's honing in on Jordan Tyson too much and he's thrown in a triple coverage. I think the Utes are capable of exposing him a little bit in this game, and I think it's going to be a nice Utah victory at home. I just don't know if the Sun Devils are going to be consistent enough on offense to get this one done based on what we've seen this year. Iowa, Wisconsin, another one of those Big Ten games here. Iowa this season has looked a little bit better than I thought they would look, especially offensively speaking. Gronowski's had some solid performances tossing the football. Wisconsin put together a spirited effort versus Michigan, 24-10 loss. So, there's a world where they compete here. There's a world where they beat Iowa. But really, when you're just talking about what we have seen, I think it's just got to be Iowa, man. Does the Wisconsin offense have what it takes to move the ball effectively and succeed versus Iowa? It just doesn't really feel like it a whole lot. So I'm going to rock with Iowa in this one. We've got UCLA at Michigan State. Really intriguing game to talk about. You talk about the way UCLA came out and played. Jerry Neuheisel, the new play caller for UCLA, and they dropped 42 on Penn State. Just a remarkable performance. Michigan State's defense hasn't been super killer, but I do think they're going to have a better game plan, and they're not going to let Nico just run all over the place against them like he did against Penn State. I'm not really sure what that Nittany Lions game plan was. Spartans are about touchdown favorite here, which does surprise me. I think that's a little more than I would personally give them, but I do think Michigan State showed some solid fight last week against Nebraska. I think they'll get a win here, but if UCLA wins it, there's going to be some very interesting conversations that are had in East Lansing, and even more interesting conversations that are had in Los Angeles or Pasadena, whatever you want to consider UCLA. Alabama on the road versus Missouri. The Crimson Tide coming off of back-to-back statement victories. They beat Georgia on the road. They come back home. They win a physical game versus Vanderbilt, but I think that's worth noting. They've played back-to-back very physical, emotional games. Now they're headed on the road to play a Missouri team that has not had to play a road game yet this season. They've been all home games, one neutral site game against Kansas, which is basically a home game for Missouri. So they've been in a really good spot this year, and they now get to host Alabama. It's pretty crazy. All of their portal guys they added have seemingly been home runs. Bo Pribula looks awesome out there. Ahmad Hardy has been an animal. They've got a few key defensive guys that have really gelled. The defensive staff is still held together, even though they're another year removed without Blake Baker leading that defense. It's been really impressive. And now they're at home, and I look at that razor-thin spread, and I think, Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Alabama is not a perfect team. They're not immune to a loss like this. We've seen them, and we saw them in the second half versus Georgia. Even if Ty Simpson's playing well, there's times where the offense struggles to produce. And I straight up just think Missouri is capable of going out and making this happen. I think Missouri pulls off another big-time upset. Could you imagine if Bama and Georgia both lose this weekend? Both are like 3.5-point favorites on the road. I think that's what's going to happen. So give me Missouri to get a win and stay undefeated. Charlotte at Army is an American Conference battle. Army shouldn't have any problems here. Charlotte just doesn't look very good. Army obviously has had their fair share of struggles, and they've taken some tough losses, but at home, they'll be fine. It does feel like Washington State as a program has an upset win like this, in their pocket. I remember those non-conference wins they got over Wisconsin those back-to-back years. They've done similar stuff, but not this year. I think Ole Miss wins it. Ole Miss looks really excellent. NC State at Notre Dame. The NC State defense has been Swiss cheese, and CJ Carr has been absolutely dealing recently, so shouldn't be an issue for him. Wake Forest travels to play Oregon State. Oregon State is 0-6 on the season, and yet according to post-game win expectancy, they should be 4-2, which is a really sad and somber thing to say. But if you look at the team and you watch how they play and you see the special teams, it shouldn't be a surprise. Oregon State just can't do the little things right, and it bites them, even when they play a really excellent game, even when their offense is humming like it is. Wake Forest is going to get a win. It's going to be like 28-24. Oregon State's going to have a chance to win late. They're going to find a way to choke it. They're going to go 0-7. I really think Trent Bray should be fired. Maybe they're waiting until the end of the year. I just don't think Oregon State's winning this one, especially because Wake Forest has shined a couple times. That nice win over Virginia Tech last week, I see them. They had leads versus NC State, and trying to remember who else they had a lead with, but they've had multiple leads in conference play. So. And that they've choked away. So Wake Forest, not a terrible team this year. Air Force at UNLV. It's just going to be a tough trip for an Air Force team that hasn't been super great this year. UNLV has had a spotty defense. Air Force can put up points. They showed that versus Hawaii. They showed that a little bit versus Navy. But UNLV should get the home win. We've got the Red River Shootout. This is a game I will be at, Oklahoma, Texas. I am super stoked for this one. I think it's going to be really exciting. Like this game is every single year. There's just unpredictability. It just feels like chaos. The urgency is off the charts. It's just nuts every time. I don't even particularly care if John Mateer is going to play in this game. I know that he's trying to do it, but it kind of feels like 60% chance he doesn't play in this one. I still really like Oklahoma in this game. Both teams have really excellent defenses with really high floors, but the Texas offense, man, it's just been inept. They just cannot figure it out. They are not running the ball super effectively. They keep trying to throw it with Arch, and he is just, something's not clicking. Something's very off. I honestly trust the Oklahoma offense, coached by Ben Arbuckle with Michael Hawkins Jr., to produce and manufacture offense more than I trust Texas' offense. So I'm rocking with Oklahoma. It's just been that disastrous of a start to the season for the Texas Longhorns. Ball State at Western Michigan. Ball State coming off of a massive upset victory over Ohio that kind of came out of nowhere last week. That was pretty awesome, and Western Michigan's off to a pleasantly surprising start to the season as well. They took a couple tough early losses, but a couple statement victories in a row. Both these teams have had a lot of bright lights and a lot of positive things happen. I think Western Michigan will get the home victory versus Ball State, but still, huge shout out to Ball State for pulling off a pretty unthinkable win last week. San Jose State heads on the road to play Wyoming. San Jose State feels like kind of got their season back online with a nice win versus New Mexico. I think they just keep it going and get a win at Wyoming. Wyoming's just had a really tough start to the year. Jay Saville, you get the sense the heat's getting turned up on him a little bit. This is kind of one of those games Wyoming really needs. I think San Jose State is going to get it. San Diego State at Nevada. Jeff Choate, Nevada, year 2, not showing a ton of signs of life that you would hope to see in his second year. And San Diego State, meanwhile, my goodness, has it been a great start to a second season for Sean Lewis this year. They've really shined in a lot of areas. They've looked very excellent, and I think they'll get another nice win here, another nice victory over Colorado State last week. And then finally, we have Utah State at Hawaii. Rainbow Warriors have showed a lot of really good stuff, but Utah State has also been pretty excellent this season. This one's going to be a battle, and I feel like the loser is kind of going to get labeled as a pretender in the Mountain West. The winner maybe could launch themselves all the way to contender status. Hawaii at home, they don't have much of a home field advantage. The travel distance is still a factor there, but to me, I just think Utah State has looked pretty dominant this year. And so I think they go on the road, and I think they find a way to get it done versus Hawaii and sort of get a nice win there. So that's it. There it is. Every single pick for Week 7. It is a pretty awesome week. There's a lot of high-profile and massive matchups, and I was feeling bold today. A couple of upset picks in there. Let me know down in the comments what you think of my picks, what of my picks maybe you disagree with. Don't even know if any of that was really English. That was a little disjointed, so I apologize. But either way, always one of my favorite videos to make. If you haven't joined the Discord, feel free to join it. It'll be linked down in the description below. But that's all I got for you guys today. I appreciate you guys watching. And with that being said, I will see you guys next week.